When it comes to creating atmosphere and mood in our photographs, there's no substitution for first of all finding a brilliant location and secondly going in search of that perfect light. But sometimes, even when those two things go hand in hand, we feel like our photographs just need a bit of a boost in the drama department. That's when we can turn to post-production to help us out. In this latest episode of the Basics of Photography, I'm going to show you a few techniques that you can put into practice to really bring that drama, atmosphere and mood in your photographs to life. Recently, I staged a photo walk in Stainburn Forest, in between North Yorkshire and West Yorkshire, and the title of the session was Creating Atmosphere. The whole purpose was to go out into the woodland and experiment with different techniques that we can put into practice whilst out in the field to really emphasise that atmosphere and drama within our photographs. We looked at things like slightly underexposing our photographs to pull more detail and life into the shadows. We looked at how we can use a shallow depth of field to isolate subjects within a busy location. And we also looked at how we can use pockets of light in areas of the woodland and anomalies that can provide us with useful focal points. But that can only take us so far. The photographs that I'm going to show you in a moment and work through with you were taken on this photo walk, and I hope you'll be able to see that they were already quite moody and drama filled. But with the techniques that I'm going to show you, hopefully you'll see that they become even more moody and really pick up on the drama and mood and atmosphere of the location where we were shooting. Now, if you've watched this channel before, you'll know that my go-to photo post-production software is Capture One. But don't let that put you off watching the rest of this video if you use Lightroom or anything else for that matter, because a lot of the techniques, in fact all of the techniques that I cover in this video, will be accessible within your software. So keep watching, especially if you are into getting drama and mood in your pictures. Let's launch into the software now and take a look at our first picture. So here we are in Capture One, and this is one of my examples that I'm going to use. It's actually one of my favourite photographs that I took on the day. I just love the contrast between the vibrant nature of the moss on the tree and the darkness and the monochrome nature of the background, and also the contrast in light as well, the way that this tree is being emphasised in front of the shadowy trees behind. Now, things like this tree on the right hand side is a little bit distracting, as are these pockets of light over here behind the tree. So that might be something that we could work on to really pull the emphasis and our vision towards the main feature, the focal point of this photograph, which is the moss-clad tree in the centre. So I'm going to start off by just increasing the contrast ever so slightly. What that's going to do is it's going to darken the background and bring a bit more life into the highlights in the foreground. But as you can see, by doing that, we've lost a little bit of detail on the tree itself. So I'm going to bring the shadows up ever so slightly just to give us a bit more detail in the foreground. But as you can see, because it's altering the shadows for the whole photograph, it's brought the shadows up in the background as well, which I don't necessarily want. So I'm going to add in a layer and call this background shadow. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my exposure down on this extra little bit of painting that I'm going to do and start painting in these darker areas to really darken them down even more than they are so already. Now, the beauty of this is I can change the intensity of this exposure as I go along. I can tweak that slider if I want to. And that's hopefully going to do something on this side with that pesky tree that's in the background that's taking our attention away. I may darken these shadows down even further just to get rid of it completely, and so we can ignore the shadowy areas that have still got a bit of detail in them. Just by doing it quite quickly sometimes moves over the more fiddly areas where we'd like to keep a bit of detail, but at the same time it works in terms of going over it and over it with a bit more intensity to get rid of the bits that we don't necessarily want, which is most of this section over here. I'll just do a bit more down here so we get rid of the stump as well, which looks a bit weird if there's just a stump in the middle of nowhere, and maybe balance that out at that side a bit as well so it doesn't look completely strange. Right, so if I go to before and after, we can see that we've got quite a bit of detail to very much little detail in the background once we've tweaked that exposure ever so slightly. So I'm going to make sure I go back to the background. So now I'm back to editing the whole picture, not just that shadow layer. And I'm going to increase the clarity and structure ever so slightly. These are some things that you really shouldn't go overboard with because they start looking a bit false if you're not too careful. And I think that's enough. 12 and 2 seem to be absolutely fine. I'm also going to add a little bit of a vignette to this as well, so it just darkens the corners down a bit. And that will have the emphasis of doing is drawing your eye more to the tree in the centre itself. What I could do, because I'm still losing a bit of detail in the tree at the top here, is add another layer, which I'll put underneath the background layer, called Tree Highlight. And what I'm going to do there is I'm going to increase the shadows slider on this one, and I'm just going to paint that in over the tree. So we bring a bit more life back into the details here on this tree, but not too much, because if you do it too much then it starts looking a bit false again. I'll do the before and after. So we've got a flat looking busy background shot on the left from the before, and on the right we've got a punchy, much more punchy, darker background shot, which is the exact aim that I'm going for. I'll go back to the background because what I'd like to do now is just ever so slightly warm this scene up. Oof, blimey, not that much. I would like to warm it up so it looks like we're starting to bring a bit more life into the mosses. To do that in even more detail, I'm just going to do a bit of colour grading. So when it comes to colour grading, we can split shadow, midtone and highlight to bring life and darkness and maybe a bit of colour emphasis into different areas of our photograph. So starting off with the shadow, I'm just going to move that down a little bit towards the blue area. As you can see, if I did it dramatically, it'd go all the way blue. So I don't want it hugely blue. I just want a little bit of blue in the background to make it slightly cooler and make you feel a bit more of trepidation to think what could be lurking behind this tree. As I say, I don't want to push it too far because then it starts to look false. With the midtones, I'm going to go slightly in the opposite direction. And because a lot of the midtones in this photograph are green, I'm going to start pushing it towards the greens and the yellows, just so it emphasizes those colours. And then for the highlight, I'm going to go exactly the same way. And this is going to affect basically the colour of where the light is coming through and hitting the tree itself. And with that, again, I'm going to go towards the yellowy green end. just to make it a little more vibrant in terms of those tones. Maybe slightly towards the yellow. I think green is making it a little bit too vibrant. So let's go back to our before and after. So again, muddy shot on the left, and then we've brought a little life into the foreground and a bit more punch. And also that difference in blue in the background has also brought out some detail in those needles as well, which weren't there before we did it. So as you can see, well, hopefully as you can see, we've added a bit more mood and drama into this photograph, as well as helping you to draw your eye more to the thing that you want people to look at, which in my case with this picture is the tree. Now this is quite a busy scene, but it is one of my favourites that I took on the day. I was walking through the forest and there were quite a few trees that had blown over because of the strength of the winds in the previous week. And I came across this tree that had fallen over and almost made like a cave underneath it. And I quite like these little tendrils of the roots hanging down, and also the context of the wood in the background. And I suppose some people may say this is a bit of a busy photograph, but hopefully once we've finished with the post-production stage, you will see how we can emphasize this cave area and create a feeling of drama where we can draw people's eye in towards this cave area, but also provide a bit of context with the wood in the background. So I'm going to start off by doing something similar to what I did with the last picture. So I'm going to increase the contrast, and I'm also going to increase the shadows just to bring a bit of life into the highlights and also a little bit of depth into these shadowy areas as well. I'm also going to increase the clarity and the structure, maybe not as much as the other one, because there's a lot more detail going on here and I don't want to bombard people with too much detail and shape and texture and all of the other stuff that's going on. And I'm also going to add a little bit of a vignette again, just to dial down the drawing of the eye towards the trees in the background and more towards the area of mosses, grasses and tendril roots that are hanging down over this cave entrance. So if we go on before and after, we can see that that's made some difference, but it's still not looking as I remember it looking on the day when I took this photograph. When it comes to post-production, I think that's something always that we need to keep in the back of our minds, because we can go a bit too far with how far we push a photograph. But if we remember what it looked like when we took the picture in the first place, then we can start to edit it to imply our intent, like I'm doing to draw people's eye to this central cave area, but also make sure that the colours and the contrast and everything don't overpower the intent of the picture, which hopefully you'll see by the time we've finished doing this in terms of how we edit this picture. Now I'm going to start off by doing a bit of colour editing, and I'm going to pick out a green first of all. As you can see, that's appeared on my wheel over here. And I'm going to bring up the saturation of this green ever so slightly because it's looking a bit flat compared to how I remember it. I'm not going to push it too far, because if you push it too far it starts to look all psychedelic and a bit ridiculous. So I'm only going to push it a little bit, but just to bring a little bit of life back into those greens. And I'm also going to pick out the oranges of these tendril roots hanging down. Now I remember these popping a lot more. So again, I'm going to saturate the oranges quite a bit more. And I'm also going to lighten them up a bit, just to differentiate between that beautiful texture and shape of the roots hanging down against the dark, deep shadows of the cave itself. I'm just going to go back to the greens, because with that I'm going to darken those down so they become almost on a par with the light that we've got coming off the orange roots. And that's starting now to look a little bit more like I remember it looking when I was actually in the scene itself. So again, I'm going to do a little bit of colour grading on this, and similar to the last photograph, I'm going to add a bit more blue into the shadows just to make it a little bit cooler and a bit more foreboding as you think maybe what could be in that cave or what's coming out of the woods behind. And with the midtones, because we've got a lot of these oranges in the midtones, I'm going to take that a bit further over towards the orangey red side rather than the greeny yellow side like we did with the previous picture. And with the highlights, because a lot of those are on the greens, then this time I'm going to push it again up towards that yellowy green side. So we've got a lot more life within the cave entrance, as I keep calling it or referring to it, but we've lost a bit of detail in the trees in the background, which is what I was aiming for, because the trees give context, but the main focal point itself is this cave area. So if we do a before and after, you can see that we've got far much more emphasis now on where I intend my viewer to look at the picture when they look at it. And it's also created more of that mood and atmosphere by drawing your eye to that area, but also the colours and textures working nicely together. Now, it's always good to look back at a photograph when you've edited it, because now as I'm looking at it, I think, ooh, I've gone a bit too far with the vignette. I think it's starting to look a bit false in the corners. So to finish off, I'm just going to pull that vignette back ever so slightly so it starts to look a bit more natural, but yet it still has that subtle effect of drawing your eye in towards the central section. So there we go. I hope those techniques that I've just run through there will help you going forward to create more mood and atmosphere in your photographs. At this point, I think it's really important for me to reiterate what I said at the very beginning of this video, that there's no substitute for going out and finding a great location and some good light to go with it to form a basis. I don't think we should see post-production as trying to rescue a photograph where you haven't really found intent in the first place. It should be about adding to and intensifying that intent to really channel your viewer's attention to what you wanted to get from that photograph. And if you haven't got a good location and good light in the first place, then it's very rare that you're going to be able to get that out of post-production, unless you're a whiz at artificial intelligence and that sort of stuff, which I'm certainly not. I much prefer going out and finding the atmosphere, feeling it for myself, and then trying to rekindle that when I'm post-producing my photographs. In a moment, I'll show you all of the photographs that I took on that outing at Stainburn Forest, and hopefully you'll see that intent coming through. Before I do, I'd like to encourage you to like this video. By liking it, you're going to be able to disseminate it around more people who are looking to improve their post-production skills and create atmosphere and mood in their photographs. If you haven't yet subscribed to the Yorkshire Photo Walks YouTube channel, then please do so for more videos just like this one. If you'd like to see more videos like this or more videos about something else, then please share your comments in the section below. I would love to hear from you. As always, this channel is directed by the people who watch it, so if you'd like to give me feedback, then that would be absolutely fantastic. And if you'd like to learn practically out in the field to improve your photography skills in locations just like Stainburn Forest, then check out YorkshirePhotoWalks.com for our latest photo walk schedule. If you'd like to see more of my own personal photographic work, then check out flatcap.photo. You can also follow me, flatcap.photo, on Instagram. Hopefully this has helped you to improve the way that you use post-production to create mood and atmosphere in your photographs. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. I will see you very soon.